All right, we got a great episode coming up for you today off a Brooklyn Nets win over the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's not about the superstars, or maybe it is, Doug. A budding young rookie takes center stage and really helps spark the Nets. Cam Thomas finally shows us at the NBA level what he is certainly capable of. And then we dive into more of the rotation and supporting cast. Decisions need to be made, and tonight could have been the one as the coaching staff starts to look beyond Blake Griffin to some of the other veterans to help fill out these minutes.
Oh, Cam Thomas, 15 minutes for the rest of your life, kid. This was awesome. This is a really good one. We got into all the. It was great, man. We get really, really excited about 15 minutes. This is the most excited you ever hear me about 15 minutes of basketball. We are going to get into it all. But first, the theme music.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo.
All right, welcome back to the Locked On Nets podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. And as of always, of course, we remind you, today's episode is brought to you by Truebill. Truebill is the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for those subscriptions that you don't want, need, and can even negotiate a better deal on those that you want to keep. Check out Truebill over on Truebill.com. I'm Adam Armbrecht, at Adam Armbrecht, covering the One Giant podcast, New York Football Giants. That's Doug Norrie, DFSR extraordinaire for all your daily fantasy needs. FanDuel, DraftKings, he's got you covered. At Doug Norrie, blue check mark. As we come in, sir, thanking everybody for making us their first listen every single day, free on all those platforms. Following a Brooklyn Nets win over the Cleveland Cavaliers, the win we wanted to see last week, but we ultimately got here. And this is going to be a game that we don't talk about the stars, Kevin Durant and James Harden, because there's a lot of things both on the court and then a little bit beyond it that are worth getting into here on what will be a Tuesday morning for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, this was a game where we finally got, well, the Nets coaching staff did a bunch of different stuff. We're going to talk about, hopefully, just about all of it. And the Nets fans, and I think correctly, have been clamoring for Cam Thomas to play a little bit more on a team that at times with some of its rotations is desperately starved for scoring. And they did it in this game, and it worked. And well, you see it in the title, we put Cam Thomas's name in the title. I get that he only played 15 minutes in this one, but I mean, I think we can say correctly that it was sort of that adjustment and his ability to sort of microwave score at that very moment that helped push them into victory. Did he close? No, but this is the exact role that Nets fans have been wanting him to come in and fill. He actually did this exact thing tonight. And sometimes guys like that over 15 minutes can just swing a game for you. And it was a game of a lot of different stuff, but man, like this will be, he put his stamp on a game for the first time, right? This is where we saw, yes, you can come in and have him do one specific thing, the one specific thing you need to do right now, which is score a lot of points. And he did it, and it gave him the lead in the third quarter, and they never looked back.
Yeah, it's a 117-112 victory ultimately for the Brooklyn Nets. And to your point, Cam Thomas, who down in the G League, and this is oddly enough, at some point, I thought I was going to start to talk about on the podcast where everyone's been clamoring for more Cam Thomas and say he's been having some of these big scoring performances in the G League, and you wonder about the balance of getting called up. What's the schedule for the G League games? Then you get brought onto the bench, and you're only going to get a small minutes. That balance of workload was something that I wondered if they were going to have to negotiate. He comes off a 46-point performance down in the G League over the weekend. They call him up, and to your point, now there's actually a little small wrinkle and facet that I do want to get to, but just talk about the offensive game, because to your point, this is right now, Bruce Brown dealing with an injury. We obviously know Joe Harris dealing with an injury. So now Patty Mills, who's been effective, but in behind him, you need scorers. You need someone that can just knock down a handful of buckets. And to this point at the NBA level, Thomas had not been able to do it, but this was by far the most comfortable that he looked on the offensive end.
Well, he's going to always be streaky. The game's just predicated on high volume shooting. And when you shoot at high volume, sometimes you don't get enough shots to get them all to go in. So when that's the case, you are going to look pretty streaky. Some games like we saw in the summer league where the defense is non-existent, so it's going to be easier to score in those areas. That's just not going to be the case at the NBA level. So when he comes in for these short spurts, a couple shots don't fall, and then you get yanked out of the game, and it can look like you're off for the night. Like, that's just not what his game is made about. His game is he wants to be a really high volume shooter, and the Nets really, for the most part, don't really need that, and they probably can't play him for enough to be a high volume shooter when you share the court with Kevin Durant and James Harden. So like that's not going to work. Now they're so shorthanded right now, and they probably want to keep. Have we talked about this many times on our last couple of podcasts about this very thing? Keeping the minute load and just workload off Durant and Harden as much as possible. If you are able to be defensively sound enough and be able to bring him in for a short spurt and it's on that night, well, then you get what happened tonight, right? Because then you get where they're down 9, it's late in the third quarter, he's in the game, he's getting his like sort of second rotation because he did come in the first rotation in the first half. It didn't totally work that time. That's okay. He comes in, it's it's near the end of the third quarter, makes a 3, gets an and 1, makes another shot. That was a 7, or that was a 7 of his 11 points. And it went from them being down, them being down, I think, they were down 6, and then they're up 2 by the time he leaves the game, right? And it was basically all but because of his scoring. And if you can live those short spurts where the other flaws in the game aren't going to be called out, this is the exact role that we were wanting to get from him. Right? It's like come in, score volume. In this game, this point he swung the game, and that's what you want. It's just not going to happen every night, but it happened tonight. It was exactly what they needed.
So by the way, because in the first half, the thing that I did want to touch on was, and then this is to what you have talked about and what we've said on the podcast. There's a reason why he's not getting out on the court, and a lot of Nets fans or NBA fans don't like to hear the idea of, well, defense does matter, right? You can't be a total void on one end of the floor. And in this game, even in the first half where it didn't look so good, but had a block shot, got in the middle of a passing lane at one point, deflected one out of bounds. I do think just from an NBA basketball player standpoint, whatever your rating is or whatever your value is on the defensive end, you can find your rhythm that way. And the fact that he ends up getting 15 minutes in this one is where you can say, okay, first half, you get your feet wet, you feel like you're a little bit involved. Now, there was a number of sequences where James Harden, after plays, was looking over at him, giving you, hey, where were you here? Why did you leap 6 feet in the air on a closeout on the perimeter? So you did see some of the flaws.
Well, he didn't fight over. There's at least 2 screens that he fought over completely incorrectly. That he lost Kevin Love at one point. So it's bad on that end. It's okay though.
Yes. And the idea is this is why you're trying to bring him on slowly, so that he doesn't get destroyed there. So you saw the reasons why he hasn't just been brought up and been giving big minute shares, even when you have Brown or Harris out of the lineup. But to the point of what does he need to be? Exactly what you got from him. 7 shot attempts, knocked down 4 of them, 2 or 3 from beyond the arc. And again, the other facet of his offensive game was he was a bit more under control, right? Couple of shot fakes, got inside the arc for a couple of easy open looks. Like, I think that the comfort level for him was there. And whether or not it's going to happen every single night that you put him in there for 15 minutes, that's to be seen. But for a kid that played high volume in college, it's hard to be given 3 minutes once in a game and say, if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, you're probably not going to get another chance here. Players like this do need minute stretches to get into the rhythm and the flow of a game.
Totally. And this is the exact thing where there's been times where the Nets haven't needed as much, right? Like they haven't needed, like when you're staggering KD and Harden's minutes and you're asking him to play off the ball, that is going to be even harder for him. Like it's going to be hard for him to play off the ball. We saw that at times for him, even in this game, where off the ball stuff is going to be, that's also not his forte. Right. Like we've actually seen guys in the Nets offense really thrive by being really great off the ball. Like if you're really great off the ball, Bruce Brown, DeAndre Bembry, James Johnson's actually really good off the ball as a cutter, right? Like even Blake, for all his bad stuff, like kind of knows at least where to be, right? At times,
just experienced enough, right? Has enough under his belt to know.
And those guys can actually thrive with playing around the other superstars, because actually playing off the ball really well is going to be the total key. We've seen that might actually be a problem for him because he's been so used to being on the ball all the time. Again, if you can bring that in a really short spurts and just give it just enough rope, right? Like just enough
Right.
leeway to like be able to say, or leash, like just be able to say, hey, this can work now. And you have the green light. And this is a sort of defensively compromised team, especially around the perimeter, which they are in the Cavs, then it can work. It will not work like this every night, but it was the exact right timing for it now. So I think it's good. This will probably be the most excited you ever hear me personally get excited about for 15 minutes worth of basketball. Because usually 15 minutes worth of basketball is just 15 minutes. But this, I actually think, was really important for his maturity and development and what they actually need from him. And some nights it will look bad, but tonight it just didn't, and it swung the game.
So we're going to get into some of the other adjustments that the staff made, and that's why this feels like kind of a broader picture, not so much about beating the Cleveland Cavaliers, who were a much healthier version of themselves as opposed to last week when the Nets first took them on. But we're going to get into that in a minute. And I have one more little tidbit about the Cam Thomas performance tonight. But before we do, it's the holiday season, Doug, sir. And what if I am looking to Shopify?
Oh, cha-ching. That's the sound that can make you smile. If you're running your small or even large business, you have to be using Shopify. That's a sound of another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to help you start, run, and grow your business. In case you didn't know, Shopify is a complete commerce platform. It lets you start, grow, manage a business. It's subscription-based software. Allows basically anyone, like if you could just be starting this thing or just be well into into the lifespan of your business, and Shopify is going to work for what you're doing because you can set up an online store, sell your products. You can sell in physical locations, or you can just use the point of sale app and then company hardware to make it so it's over the old internet. Gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big businesses. Sometimes big businesses are the only ones that were able to kind of get their hands on this stuff. Shopify makes it so that everyone has access. Shopify powers over 1.7 million businesses, buddy. Start counting to 1.7 now and see how long it takes you. That's how many businesses Shopify powers, from first sale to full scale, reaching customers online and across social networks. With an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps, go to shopify.com/lockedonnba. It's got to be all lowercase there for a free 14-day trial. Get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/lockedonnba right now. Shopify.com/lockedonnba.
So, of course, we want to get into these additional adjustments. Remind everybody, we appreciate you making us your first listen free on all the platforms that you can find us. The other piece was, and I don't know, breaking news. You want to say we broke it here first? Kyrie Irving will be back with the team tomorrow after watching Cam Thomas's performance. That's the rumor that we're getting in the door here. That's a joke, Doug. You can feel free to laugh. You can absorb it if you want to. For the YouTube viewers, you'll see the total dead stare from Doug.
Well, that was like the look at me. Yeah, God, you can't say stuff like that to me. Like, I'm not gonna now you're joking. I can't take your tone.
I don't gauge tone on the podcast.
Well, if you watch it on YouTube, you're gonna see me like totally stoic, like amazing poker face, while just my hands are in the background are working furiously to figure out if that was actually. So there's no way. I was like, you would have stopped the podcast. Anyway, keep going. Let's talk about the other adjustments, because that's not an adjustment that's coming to the door.
No, that is not. The other adjustments that did get made in this game were, and we've talked about that dirty, gritty play of one Blake Griffin. And then we've been mentioning, especially this season, the deficiencies on the offensive end that he's had. So Steve Nash gets into it and effectively, listen, Javon Carter's a part of the benched group, but the bigger story is Blake Griffin gets benched, and in place of him, it's a ton of LaMarcus Aldridge, and then it's a ton of a guy who's been slowly seeing larger minute shares the last handful of games in James Johnson. And, matchups matter, obviously, but another interesting sample size of how other players on this roster that were brought in specifically this past offseason might be more effective, might have a better overall skill set inside of what the Nets want to do on both ends of the floor even.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is in some ways tough to talk about because not tough to talk about in the grand scheme of the real world. It's tough to talk about in the grand scheme of that stuff. We've been talking about this for 2 weeks now. A week and a half. That Blake Griffin has been overutilized for the Nets, and it has been progressively down. The downward trend on his performance has been pretty steady over the short term. We blamed it on fatigue. I think that's probably still maybe correct. The guy's just not young, and he's been asked to do a lot. But I think we were saying in nice ways, like it was just we were saying it. He needs a rest. They need to do something else. It's not working. Like whatever way we couched it in previous episodes, it kind of came to a head tonight where it looked like a total mess. And for whatever reason, does he need a rest? Is he old? Is he being continually using the wrong role? I'm not sure. He plays 9 minutes. They, under the guise of foul trouble early, are able to get out of his minutes. But then they really sealed it with the second half by starting LaMarcus Aldridge in his place. And it was 100% correct. Like it just, I don't know another way to put it. It was correct. It was correct on all the times that we said it was correct before it happened this game. Like we've been saying, this has to change, right? Like this, it just, or at least they need a break from it. Like they need to sit him down and take a break. And they did tonight. And I'd be hard pressed to see how he makes his way back into the starting lineup here, because the Aldridge minutes were so good, at least in this matchup, that, and we'll talk about James Johnson in a second, but at least the 1-for-1 on Blake to Aldridge here was, at least for this matchup against kind of a little bit slower team in the Cavs, it was, I mean, Aldridge was a plus 14 and just destroyed them in 34 minutes. And which is almost like it's not enough of the story too. Like he won 21 and 10 in 34 minutes. Those are starter minutes. He was as good as can be. I hate to make it anti-Blake here, but is there any way that Blake re-enters the start? Is there short of injury? Is there a way that he starts anymore the rest of the season?
You'd be hard pressed to think so. I mean, we
like
talked about a little bit.
How can they do it?
Yeah,
how can they do it?
And there's a big reason for us. I mean, even beyond, because you mentioned Cleveland, right? Healthier in this game, a lot of length and size. Wade and Markkanen and even Okoro, Jared Allen, even whatever you want to put on the Kevin Love minutes, like just a lot of length, but not all of those guys are the most high-end athletes by NBA standards. So it's still an opportunity where Blake Griffin should be able to have some success. The biggest problem is that you can love all of the dirty blue-collar boy work that Blake Griffin has done, and I do love it. And I do think it's important to have those guys on the roster. But, by the way, typically those guys are usually bench guys that are doing all those dirty things for you, and all the vets love them, and the star players really appreciate all the grit that they have. But you can see it in this game. The biggest difference when you go to LaMarcus Aldridge is he's automatic in the mid-range jumper. So now all of a sudden on the offensive ends, like forget about the defensive piece of it, because Aldridge he holds his own. We know about the bad matchups when guys are going to be able to get out and run on him. He's going to get caught in the wash a little bit, but offensively, Harden needs to have as many possible outlet options when he drives the lane. And Blake Griffin, he's not automatic from anywhere on the floor. I mean, he's shy of a layup dunk, right? Shy of running the high pick and roll and dropping down into the lane on the basket for a roll pass. Like, if that's
he's not even, by the way, just cut you off. He's not even good at that. Like it's like
right. That's the best of what he has on the offensive end, and that has not been good. And teams, whether it's Cleveland or otherwise, when he's on the floor, and that's going to be what you at least is an option offensively, will congest the lane for you. Kick it outside and see what happens. And then, by the way, we even saw it in the 2 shots that he had tonight. Again, it was another penetration on the baseline by James Harden. Found Blake Griffin wide open for a triple. Couldn't knock it down. He's never been great. He's been absolutely atrocious from beyond the arc. Long story short, no. And go back, you said last week and a half or so, we've been talking about Griffin, but go back, 2.5, 3 weeks. I said, LaMarcus Aldridge is the answer for this starting 5. He makes them more effective. And especially when you don't have a talent like Kyrie offensively, you need to have consistency. Consistency is what's most important behind James Harden, behind Kevin Durant. LaMarcus Aldridge is incredibly consistent. I don't even mean that he hits down an insane percentage so far this season. It's that you can rely on him to do the things on the offensive end with consistency and reliability. Blake Griffin is a wild card. If he happens to bang bodies and get some rebounds, if he happens to knock down some triples, it's a blessing. But for the most part, it's been a real dud zero, and now you're talking about having a net negative on the offensive end, and the Nets just can't afford to have that this season.
Yeah, Lucas Kaplan wrote a great piece for Nets Daily, which is worth checking out if you haven't seen it. And he timed it perfectly for when it released, because it released today, and it's not like he knew what was going to happen in this game. And Lucas is a super smart dude, and he gives some really great breakdowns about why this hasn't been working and why the Nets were sort of in an impossible situation. The reason I bring that up is because in this game, it was the disparity was so great between the minutes that can be at any point along the bell curve of NBA and basketball understanding and see that this was clearly the move to make, right? Like,
Yep.
even if you were an apologist, and I think we've actually been Blake apologists to some degree because we've been saying that it's a fatigue thing and it's his age, and it's not like he's done all the things he can do. They just have sort of been capped out on what he can do now, right? Like,
Yep.
this is, we've said it, we've sort of couched it in that way up until now. But now the difference was so glaring between what you got here. And now look, that might happen to Aldridge too. You give Aldridge 30 minutes a game for 10 straight games, and we might be having the same exact conversation. So it's like, these guys are not young, but at least for this one game, it was so glaring that I just don't know how you reverse course at this point.
Yeah, I think the writing's pretty clear on the wall for Blake Griffin, for the Brooklyn Nets, and what they need to do. But I want to follow up with you with a question, because you just mentioned now LaMarcus Aldridge, right? Where do all these minutes end up going? So there's a follow up there before we even get into what James Johnson provided in this game too. Before we do, I got to tell you about Truebill, which is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions that you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save over $720 a year, my friends, with Truebill, just because, listen, I've got subscriptions. I don't know what I'm subscribed to. I'm paying a lot of things. Sometimes I pay the same company twice because I just like their products so much. And I'm that kind of person that forgets what bank accounts are linked to which things. The bottom line is that Truebill will go ahead and concierge their way through the process for you. So you cancel the unwanted subscriptions. You don't have to get in the middle of it all. And by the end of it, you got coin back in your pocket and you have all those favorite things you need with none of the junk that you don't. You can go ahead and not fall for any more of those subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now to truebill.com/lockedonnba. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/lockedonnba.
And when you're done with that, head on over to Rock Auto. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, you know that getting car parts, buying car parts can be something of a challenge, because if you go to the local place, they disappear into the cavern. That's after they just typed something into the computer that you told them to type into the computer. So you have a computer, at your own fingertips, phone or laptop right in front of you. You can do all the same things that the local place is doing, except you do it over at rockauto.com, and you're going to get 30 or even 50% better prices. Drag and drop menus for make and model. It's easy as can be. Plus, it's a family-run business for over 20 years, serving those do-it-yourselfers like you and me. The Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every single customer, and you're not dealing with those local chain stores where you're not sure exactly what you're going to get. They come back with the unmarked box, and you're hoping it's the right part. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, right? Locked on in the How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car or truck will ever need. rockauto.com.
So LaMarcus Aldridge has another great game, but you said it there at the end of that conversation. If you give him 30 minutes, what does it look like? And then also matchup dependent, right? So then I think the step further is, first part was the coaching staff, because we talked about him a lot more lately, even at the beginning of the year, giving Nicholas Claxton a run, right, to see what he had, keeping Blake Griffin in the starting lineup. Is there an element to the coaching staff saying, hey, these are the guys that did the work for us last year, they deserve every opportunity? And now, even if you do move to LaMarcus Aldridge, isn't there still going to be this glaring concern around LaMarcus Aldridge, James Johnson, right? Paul Millsap, we already had concerns for him all year. They're all old. Like, there's nobody else at that 5 outside of Day'Ron Sharpe and the return of Nicholas Claxton in that 4-5 flexible role that the Nets can go to here. And it does still seem like, even if Blake Griffin it shouldn't be back in the starting lineup, he's still going to be getting big minutes. Like, he's still going to be getting 15, 20 solid minutes a game, because who are the other bodies you're going to throw out there?
I think it's going to be a problem all year. The age was always going to be a problem from the start. You would hope that the thing with having Kyrie, and I hate that, like, not like Kyrie is some weird proxy for these other guys. Like, the Kyrie's minutes don't necessarily go 1-to-1 to somebody else. They do go sort of like 1A and 1B to 1 for these guys. It gets kicked down the chain a little bit. My point is, though, the hope was going to be that these other guys would take so much offensively that you'd be able to have grit and grind stuff behind all this other stuff, do all the other little things right, and no one's really getting overtaxed or overextended. I think it happened with Blake. We haven't really seen enough of James Johnson and Paul Millsap. The Aldridge thing is probably falls in that category too. It's hard to know exactly what happens until we see it. I think it's always going to be concerned that there will probably be death by exposure by giving any one of these guys too many minutes, because there's just a reason they all kind of came cheap at the latter end of their career. It wasn't because the
Yeah.
Nets, every team had, the chance to see these guys. It works a little bit better when you play with superstars, but there's always going to be this thing where it's always probably going to look a little bit better to start and then maybe get tail off a little bit as they play more and more. It's okay if you can maybe keep rotating that angle over the course of the year and just say, hey, this is your sort of run now, and this is your run, and we get you a little rejuvenated. I'm not sure that was part of their central plan to start, really. I think they were kind of just doing what they thought worked best. They might have just backed into this now through other injuries and other guys, just other guys just sort of getting debilitating results sort of as the time goes on. So I think that while it looks good now, we'll see it probably get worse over time with everyone playing a little more minutes. But if we can keep cycling, then I think that's a plan. Because clearly what we saw out of James Johnson looks pretty darn good. This is a guy they could use and probably should have been playing more up until before now.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing too. And you never know what guys' conditions are coming in from the off season, whatever may, lead up to the buildup of them actually getting minute shares. But it's kind of that dovetail question of, well, what's then the better or best version of these lineups and of these rotations for the Nets where, okay, you're going to start LaMarcus Aldridge now instead of Blake Griffin. That solves your problem. But then beyond that, do you start to look at it and say, yeah, now James Johnson should be the next man off the bench after Aldridge, and you shuffle these rotations around a little bit. We say positionless basketball, but even going back to that Golden State Warriors game, hey, what about when you can't use Aldridge because he's going to get beat up in those matchups? Then maybe it is the Kevin Durant at the 5 and then put other nice pieces around them. We're not going to get to Bembry, who started in this game, but these are the kind of athletic, flexible players that have defensive value that can help you reshape over the course of this season. But specifically on James Johnson, he can do a little bit of everything. And it's not the cleanest, it's not the sexiest, but he can do enough of everything when you have Kevin Durant, when you have James Harden, and it just looks like, maybe too small of a sample size to confirm it, that he fits better in this supporting role. Specifically, again, keep talking about it, balance, both ends of the floor. He fits better than what Blake Griffin has shown us this year as opposed to last season.
Yeah, I mean, it looks okay for now. Again, it's never going to be all great. He needs
The
to
mutton chops look great.
Oh, by the way, I never told the beginning of the story. We don't have time now, but I still have a great James Johnson story from my early days of doing basketball projections, which is
Lovely.
it's definitely worth it. But I will get to it another thing. But no, look, you need guys with this group. You need guys that are going to be pretty physical. Being a good cutter really helps in this system. If you can understand how to cut, if you can understand how to get to the basket, if you can sort of if you can at least confidently finish around the basket, you're going to be in good shape, because you're usually going to get 1-to-1 matchups in and around the rim with the way that Durant and Harden help you space. And he's mostly pretty good at that stuff. It's a total disaster if you give him the ball for a long period of time. So you don't want that to happen, really. But if you
love his enthusiasm around.
The enthusiasm's great. The enthusiasm's great. And I would, if you mix it up with one-on-one with him in an actual fight, you're totally dust. So you like to have that stuff on your team. You're gonna get slept on pretty quick. But he's far from a perfect basketball player, and guys like this can have really quality minutes with the Nets because the other offensive pieces around the Nets are so good that you don't need reliance on them to play 30 minutes and take 13 shots, say, or something like that. He even called at other points in his career, when he was at Dallas, I think Toronto for a little bit, where it was hey, you get in there and take 10, 13 shots. That's not good. You do not want to be in that zone with James Johnson, right?
By the way, took 10 shots tonight, and one or two less would be fine by me.
Exactly. We see what happens. Not all these shots look amazing, right?
But now, just in context of this game, he literally on back-to-back possessions airballed a 3, clean over, and then came right back down and sank it that. And that's what you need. You need confidence to keep chucking it.
I'm here for it. I'm here for the James Johnson experience all the way through. I have been wanting him to play more from the beginning, right? We've wanted to see. We've been mostly calling for, let's just see a little bit more of everybody, so we can get a sense of what they can do. Guys I'll still say that about Millsap right now. We're still not seeing enough of Millsap, and so still we hadn't seen enough of Cam Thomas. Like, you're at the point of the season where it never made sense to bury guys in favor of like long extended looks at, frankly, a guy like Blake that you already knew what you were going to get, right? So whatever's going to get you into more minutes from these guys, this is still the time. We're still so early in the season. This is time to find out what you have in them. And if it looks bad for a little bit, it looks bad, but like, at least let's see it, right? Like, and
Yeah.
and that's what's starting to happen now, kind of out of necessity because of injuries, but we're starting to see what these guys can provide. And by and large, it's pretty good. We just haven't seen enough of it.
And the next man up is going to be Day'Ron Sharpe. So from my lips to Steve Nash's ears, he's the next guy to get a little chance there. But before we do get out on that piece of it, first of all, awesome to see Cam Thomas. Let's just wrap this thing back up in the idea of the Nets won a game, franchise best start of their season in history coming into this game already with their record. Now they get their 13th win. Mostly positive stuff you take away from this game. Would you put this as do you make a little notation in the Doug Norrie book of the season saying, okay, you maybe wasted whatever legs or minutes you thought you had in Blake Griffin. Like, why did you waste the first 20 games almost rehashing Blake Griffin's skill set as opposed to looking at these guys? Is that something is this a theme that carries forward for you of why didn't we see this sooner? The rookies are always, we agree, they needed their time. But these veteran players, it does feel like it's taking the coaching staff a long time to flesh their way through what these other guys are.
I would say with Blake that no, because I think there's another piece that you're managing here, which is like the name of Blake Griffin and the history of him in the league and what he's sort of meant and what he's sort of done. And I think rewarding that from last season makes sense to not have an itchy trigger finger when it comes to pulling, right? Like, I don't see his situation as exactly the same, even as like Millsap, even though they've been in the league for, roughly the same amount of time or whatever. I mean, not, but like they've been in the league for a long time. I think that what he gave you last year and who he was and sort of getting bought out and coming over and all that stuff, I think that did warrant probably, most times you want to kill it before it dies, and they didn't do that in this situation. But like, I think it's okay because of the other context around it that these other guys don't have, right? Like, I just don't think the other guys have either the cachet or the name or like, the league buy-in or the ex superstar. Like, he checks a lot of boxes that these other guys don't check. And so I do kind of get it. And it's just, maybe they just figured it out though now. Like, at least, so, and maybe you see a long extended period of time of him not playing for a little bit, and that's works. Like, it worked really well last year because he didn't play for like forever. With Detroit and then came and played with them. And so now he maybe just needs a longer break. And so I don't know, maybe it all ends up working out. And so I guess I'm still very much like pro wanting Blake Griffin to be a part of the team because I think it's been a really important piece for them to have. And I think this is also a good opportunity for them to find out what other stuff they have. And I think this gives them a nice excuse.
Reset the hierarchy. That's the possibility over the next 15, 20 games for the Brooklyn Nets as they figure some things out. Don't forget, friends, I'll be on with John Careless previewing the Boston Celtics game. That's going to be the next episode up for us, so be sure to check that one out. And then Doug's lining up some little things of his own as the holiday season starts to roll around. But looking forward to getting a long break here. By the way, Kevin Durant is going to get a nice bit of rest here. Not a lot of games over about 8 days for the Brooklyn Nets. Continue to rejuvenate them as we are approaching the quarter mark of the season. Hopefully, the Nets continue to figure things out with another big win over the Cavs.
All right, we're going to do some Thanksgiving-related stuff later in the week. Also, they got a Friday night game after Thanksgiving, but we'll do some, like Turkey Day-related stuff later in the week. In the meantime, make sure you are subscribed to the Locked On Nets YouTube channel. All these episodes and more are going up on our YouTube channel. Really love to see the results we've seen there. The comments are great. Mailbag questions have come from there. It's really been a great experience over on YouTube. The link will be in the show notes. Make sure you are subscribing to the Locked On Nets YouTube channel.
Shout out to Tall Mike. Had a heck of a weekend up there at the mansion, my friend. What a listener.
Real quick. I'm gonna throw it in the end. Shoot, I meant to say this at the end. I'm glad you did it. Adam got recognized for the first time in the podcast. It's a seminal moment in the podcast where someone who did not know us, I didn't believe him. I still kind of don't. That that someone that was not informed ahead of time that brought up the lockdown that's live action setting noticed him, and I made even a freaking note right here to bring it up as a thing. But I'm glad that you did it. So yeah, Tall Mike, shout out. I hope that nothing bad was said about me at the thing.
It was all glowing. It was all glowing. It was all fantastic. We all had a great time. And in the idea of coming together, making friends, and forming a bit of a unity. Yeah, I love doing ensemble pieces. You get to meet so many new people and make new friends. Devin Sawa.
Oh, one of the all-time great poets.
Final Destination.
Final Destination. Shoot, I knew
Shout
it.
out.
He made it. He survived. Okay, we're gonna be back again. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.